I used to think our life together was as perfect as it could get. Julie and I had been married for 5 years, and while we weren't without our quirks, like how I always left the toilet seat up and she could never decide what to watch on Netflix, we had a routine that worked. We had a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 cars in the driveway, and a cat named Whiskers who was more of a diva than either of us. But recently, I felt something change. It was subtle at first, like a slight shift in the air that you can't quite put your finger on. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of our jobs. Julie was a project manager at a tech firm and things were particularly hectic at work. I figured she was just busy and tired. But as the weeks passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. She became distant, lost in her phone, smiling at texts that I couldn't see. I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just chatting with a friend, or getting into some new series that I wasn't aware of. Then came the first major sign, the late nights. Julie started working late more often. She would come home around 10 p.m., hair tousled, and smell faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked her about it, she would roll her eyes and say it was just a late meeting. I wanted to trust her, but that nagging feeling in my gut never went away. Then one night, I decided to take a peek at her phone while she was in the shower. I know, it's a breach of trust, but I was desperate for answers. I have never been the type to snoop, but when you feel your world start to crumble, you grasp at anything to hold on to. I found messages that made my stomach drop. Flirty exchanges with someone named Jake, and not just casual banter. It was clear they were meeting up. My heart raced as I read through the messages, each one more damning than the last. I remember pacing around the living room, the air thick with tension. I felt like I was suffocating. I didn't know how to confront her, how to break the illusion of our perfect life. When she finally came out of the shower, I acted like everything was normal, but I couldn't keep that facade up. The next morning, I confronted her over breakfast. I asked her about Jake, about the messages. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and anger, like I had just accused her of robbing a bank. "What are you talking about?" She sneered, as if I were the one losing my mind. I told her I had seen the messages, and her reaction was shocking. Instead of owning up, she twisted the narrative. "You know you're just projecting your insecurities onto me, right? This is all in your head," she said, dismissing my feelings as if they were nothing. She went on to say that I was unstable, that maybe I needed help. The betrayal stung more than anything else. I had come to her with a raw heart, and she had slapped it away with cruel words and accusations. How could she lie so easily? That day was a blur. I felt like I was in some twisted psychological game. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, but instead I sat there stunned, trying to make sense of it all. I couldn't believe she would turn this back on me, making me the villain in her story. As the day turned into night, I replayed the confrontation in my head. I went from anger to despair, thinking about how everything I thought we had was crumbling apart. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a betrayal of our life together, our promise to be honest with each other. I felt like I had been haunted by the ghosts of our love, and now I was left with the chilling realization that the person I trusted most had become a stranger. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartache. I barely ate. I found solace in the bottom of a whiskey glass instead. Every moment at home felt heavy, like I was trudging through mud. I would see Julie moving around, her movements fluid yet detached, and it drove me crazy. There she was, the woman I loved, seemingly unaffected by the devastation she was causing. I wanted to confront her again, but the last time had left me feeling powerless, like I was drowning in her denial. I spent one evening scrolling through her social media accounts, hoping to find more evidence that would confirm my suspicions. What I saw only made me feel worse. There were photos of her with friends, laughing, living her life, but something felt off. The captions were filled with inside jokes that I didn't understand. I felt like an outsider looking in on my own life. It was a stark reminder of how disconnected we had become. Then I had an idea. If I couldn't get closure through conversation, maybe I could gather more evidence. I remembered that Julie had a work event coming up, a conference in the city. She had mentioned it casually, and I thought, what if that was when she was meeting Jake? So, I decided to play my own detective. The night of the conference arrived, and I took a seat at the bar across the street from the hotel. I ordered a drink and watched as people trickled in. I felt like I was on the set of some twisted thriller. The whole time I was a bundle of nerves, ready to explode at any moment. At first, it was just a regular stream of guests, people in suits, excited chatter, the clink of glasses, and then I saw her. Julie walked in, looking stunning in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves, but she was alone. My heart sank. I had half expected her to show up with Jake, but maybe they had made plans for later. I sat there for hours, watching. Julie mingled with colleagues, laughing and chatting, and I could tell she was enjoying herself. It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was putting on a show, and I was the fool watching from the sidelines. Then, a little later, I saw him, Jake, tall, with a charming smile and a confident stride. He walked in with another group, and I felt a surge of anger. There was no denying the chemistry they had. Even from a distance, I could see how she lit up around him. It was like someone was ripping my heart out and showing it to me. I watched as they exchanged a few words, and then I saw them lean in closer, their laughter echoing in my mind like an ominous warning. I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped out of the bar and walked toward the hotel, my heart pounding in my chest. The plan was to confront her right then and there, but I hesitated at the entrance. The thought of ruining her night, of creating a scene, made me second-guess myself. Instead, I took a deep breath and decided to leave. I couldn't bear the thought of what I might see next. I wanted the element of surprise. I wanted to catch her in the act of infidelity, but the reality of the situation was too painful to witness. I texted her, pretending to be supportive, telling her I hoped she was having a great time. As I drove home, the anger simmered beneath the surface, ready to boil over. When I got back, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. I was angry, hurt, and lost. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her feel the way I felt. But most of all, I wanted answers. I needed to know why. Why her? Why Jake? That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the events of the evening over and over. It was as if my mind was stuck on a loop of betrayal. I felt like I was a ghost haunting the remnants of our love, unable to fully grasp what had happened. I thought about everything we had been through, the promises we had made to each other. How could she so easily discard our life together for a fling? I finally resolved to go through with it. I would confront her again, but this time I wouldn't let her turn it around on me. I wasn't unstable. I was heartbroken and betrayed, and I needed her to understand the weight of her choices. I needed to show her that I wasn't the one who had been haunted. She was. Haunted by her deceit, her lies, and the ghost of the love we'd once shared. The following morning, I woke up with a heavy heart but a newfound determination. I needed to confront Julie again, but this time, I wasn't going to let her manipulate the conversation. I had evidence now, and I was prepared to make my case. I could feel the tension in the air as I got ready for work, and it only escalated when I heard her stirring in the kitchen. As I walked into the dining room, I found her pouring a cup of coffee, her expression cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, her voice bright and cheery as if nothing were wrong. The contrast between her demeanor and what I was feeling was jarring. "Morning," I replied flatly, my stomach twisting in knots. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. I took my seat at the table, looking at her as she danced around, blissfully ignorant while I tried to figure out how to broach the subject of her infidelity. "Big day today?" she asked, pouring herself a second cup. "Not as big as the night you had last night," I shot back, unable to hold back the bitterness in my voice. Her smile faltered for a moment, and I could see the confusion on her face. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Julie," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Jake, the messages, the conference, you can't just pretend it didn't happen." Her expression shifted from confusion to defensiveness. "This again? I already told you there's nothing going on, you're just being paranoid." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "Paranoid? I saw you with him. I saw the way you looked at him. You can't keep lying to me." The air between us grew electric. She was silent, and for a moment I thought she might actually come clean, but instead she crossed her arms and shook her head. You're being ridiculous. It's just work and you're the one who needs to get help. This isn't healthy. I felt like I'd been slapped. How could she still twist this around? You expect me to believe that. You think I'm the one who needs help when you're the one sneaking around. Stop being dramatic, she snapped, her voice rising. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I can't deal with this right now. It was like a punch to the gut. Even in the face of the evidence, she refused to acknowledge her actions. The betrayal stung, but her refusal to accept responsibility hurt even more. I pushed my chair back and stood up, feeling the urge to walk away to escape the madness of it all. No, Julie. We're not done here. I'm not leaving until we talk about this, I said firmly, trying to maintain control over my emotions. She rolled her eyes, a gesture that ignited my ire further. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry for going out with friends? That I'm sorry you can't handle your jealousy? I'm not going to let you manipulate me into feeling guilty. Manipulate you? I'm not the one who has been lying and cheating. My voice boomed, and for a moment I was afraid I might shatter the fragile calm in our home. Julie's face hardened, her eyes narrowing. You're such a drama queen. Maybe you should take a step back and think about what you're doing. You're pushing me away. Maybe you've already pushed me away. I shot back, feeling the heat rise in my chest. In that moment, something shifted. I could see that beneath her bravado, she was scared. Perhaps she realized that the facade was starting to crumble, just like our marriage. But instead of confronting her fear, she doubled down, lashing out. Maybe we should just end this, she said, her words punctuated by a coldness that made my stomach twist, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt the ground shift beneath me, and for a moment I was unmoored. Is that what you really want? I asked, searching her face for a hint of the woman I had married. Maybe it is, she replied, her voice steady. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand she see the reality of what she was doing. But deep down, I realized that she had already made her choice, and I was just a bystander in her life. As I stood there, grappling with the realization that our love was on the brink of collapse, I knew I had to regain control over my own narrative. This wasn't just about her choices, it was about mine. I couldn't let her dictate the terms of our relationship any longer. I'm not going to fight you on this, Julie, I said, my voice steady, though my heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of her indifference. If you want to throw our marriage away, then that's your choice. But I won't let you make me feel like the one at fault here. With that, I turned and walked away. I needed to think. I needed to process everything, not just the betrayal, but who I was going to be moving forward. I felt lost, but I was done playing her games. I had to figure out what my next steps would be, whether that meant fighting for our marriage or beginning to prepare for a life without her. The days that followed were filled with an eerie silence. Julie and I were like two strangers cohabitating under the same roof, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could feel the tension radiating off her, a palpable frustration that filled every room we entered. I would catch her staring at me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and guilt, but as soon as I would look back, she would quickly look away, as if I were the one haunting her. I spent my evenings either at work, drowning myself in projects, or at the bar with friends, trying to distract myself from the reality of my situation. I felt like I was living in a surreal nightmare where the person I loved most was now my greatest adversary. I had no idea how it had come to this, and the realization that our marriage was unraveling left me feeling empty. I had decided that I would reach out to a lawyer. I needed to understand my options, what a separation would look like, what my rights were. It felt surreal making that call, but I needed to be proactive. I didn't want to wait around for Julie to decide the fate of our relationship. I wanted to take control, to make decisions for myself instead of waiting for her to pull the string. When I told my brother about what was happening, he was supportive but blunt. You can't let her walk all over you. If she wants to leave, let her. You deserve better than this. His words resonated with me, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could find happiness again without her. But it also made me reflect on what my life would look like without Julie. It was a terrifying thought. I had devoted so much of myself to our marriage, and the prospect of starting over felt overwhelming. One evening, I returned home late. head pounding from the weight of the day. I was exhausted and just wanted some peace. As I walked through the door, I found Julie sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. I sighed, bracing myself for yet another round of accusations and defensiveness. "About what, Julie? More lies? Just hear me out. I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her tone softer than I expected. There was a hint of vulnerability in her voice that caught me off guard. "About what? How to cover your tracks better." I couldn't help the bitterness that seeped into my words. "Enough," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about everything, the way we've been treating each other. I realize I've been acting like a jerk, and I'm sorry if I've hurt you. But you need to understand that I felt suffocated and I didn't handle it the right way." I was taken aback. I hadn't expected this kind of admission. It wasn't an apology for her infidelity, but it did show some level of introspection. "You felt suffocated. So cheating was the answer?" I asked incredulously. "I know it sounds awful, but I just wanted to feel alive again. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "So you used Jake, you used him to escape your life, and now you're just going to pretend it didn't happen." "I don't know," she said, her defenses crumbling. "I'm confused and I'm scared. I never wanted to hurt you. Please just give me a chance to explain." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I could walk away from this conversation, or I could hear her out and see if there was any truth in her words. "Fine, talk, but if you think I'm going to forget what you did, you're wrong." She nodded, her expression serious. "I get it. I deserve that, but I really want to try and fix this. I don't want to lose you." "Fix what? You've already broken it," I replied, struggling to keep my composure. "I know it's going to take time, and I don't expect you to trust me overnight. But I want to work on our marriage. I've started seeing a therapist, and I think it could really help us both." I could hardly believe my ears. This was a far cry from the defensive accusations I had grown accustomed to. "You really think a therapist is going to fix this?" I asked, skepticism dripping from my words. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to be better, for you, for us. I don't want us to end like this." As I stared into her eyes, searching for any hint of deceit, I found something I hadn't seen in a long time: desperation. It was a mix of regret and hope, and it was clear that she was willing to put in the effort to change. Part of me wanted to embrace that hope, to believe that we could rebuild what had been shattered, but another part of me screamed that I was being foolish. "Okay," I said cautiously, still unsure of my own emotions. "I'll think about it. But you need to understand, trust takes time to rebuild, and I'm not prepared to just forgive and forget." "I know," she replied softly, her eyes filling with tears. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that I can change." As I left the room, I felt a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. I was still hurt, still angry, but maybe, just maybe, this was the first step towards healing. I didn't know if I could fully trust her again, but I also knew that the future was uncertain. I had to be open to the possibility of reconciliation, even if it felt like a long shot. It was a tiny glimmer of hope in a sea of despair, but it was enough to keep me from completely giving up. I realized that the ghosts of our love might not be haunting me for much longer, and perhaps, just perhaps, there might be a way forward after all. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and awkward moments. Julie and I entered uncharted territory, where trust was a fragile thread holding us together. We began attending couples therapy, and while I initially felt skeptical, I found it strangely comforting to have a neutral party facilitate our conversations. The therapist was patient and insightful, guiding us through discussions that often spiraled into messy arguments, but at least we were talking. Julie opened up about her feelings, how she felt trapped in our life, how the monotony had dulled her senses. I had always thought her life was perfect, but hearing her perspective was like peeling back the layers of a complicated puzzle. She explained that her affair with Jake was less about him and more about her need to feel alive, to rediscover herself. While it was painful to hear, it also shed light on the issues I had been oblivious to. As we continued our sessions, I found myself sharing my own insecurities and fears. I had always kept my feelings bottled up, thinking it was my job to keep everything together. I realized in that space that my silence had contributed to her feelings of isolation. The therapist helped us both recognize that we had been living side by side for years, yet had failed to truly connect. But for every breakthrough, there were setbacks. There were days when I would catch her texting someone, my heart racing with paranoia. I'd hold back the urge to check her phone, afraid of what I might find. And there were moments when Julie would become defensive at the slightest question about her past, her anger flaring up like a simmering volcano. One evening, we had a particularly tough session. We had been discussing the boundaries we needed to set, and as we drove home, the tension was palpable. "You still don't trust me," she said, her voice filled with frustration. "It's hard, Julie. You broke my trust. How do you expect me to just forget that?" I shot back, my patience wearing thin. "I'm trying, I'm really trying," she yelled, slamming her hand against the steering wheel. "You need to meet me halfway." The argument escalated, and by the time we got home, I was ready to explode. "You think this is easy for me? I'm the one who has to live with the knowledge that you cheated on me," I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty house. Julie's expression softened, and I saw the pain in her eyes. "I know. I'm not trying to dismiss your feelings. I just want you to understand that I'm working on myself too." Silence fell over us, thick and suffocating. I wanted to reach out to comfort her, but I felt so conflicted. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "Do what? Fight for us?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Yeah, I want to, but I don't know how. I'm scared, Julie, scared of getting hurt again," I confessed, feeling the weight of my vulnerability. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked so small in that moment. "I'm scared too. I don't want to lose you, I just want us back." I stepped closer, the distance between us narrowing. "We can't go back to the way things were, Julie. We have to build something new." "Then let's do that," she said, her eyes searching my face for some sign of hope. "Let's work together to create something better." It was a small spark of hope, but it was enough to keep me from walking away. We both knew we had a long road ahead, but maybe we could find our way through the darkness together. As we navigated this new phase of our relationship, I found comfort in the little things. We started going on walks together, talking about our dreams, our insecurities, and even our favorite memories. Laughter began to return, albeit cautiously, and I could see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But just as things began to feel somewhat stable, the bombshell dropped. One evening, I returned home after a long day, eager to share the news of a promotion I had just received. I walked into the living room, only to find Julie sitting on the couch, her face pale and her hands shaking. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart dropping at her expression. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "It's about Jake." My stomach twisted, I braced myself for the worst. "What about him?" "He wants to meet, he wants to apologize." The words hung in the air like a lead balloon. "Apologize for what? Breaking us apart?" "Yes," she said, biting her lip. "I think it would help us both to have closure." "Closure? You think meeting him is going to fix everything? What about my closure? What about what I need?" "I didn't say it would fix everything," she exclaimed, her frustration boiling over. "But I think it could help us move forward. I need to face my past to be fully committed to our future." I could feel anger surging through me. "You really think it's a good idea to meet him, after everything?" "Yes, I think it's important to confront my mistakes. I owe it to you and I owe it to myself," she insisted, her eyes pleading with me to understand. I paced the room, grappling with my emotions. "What if he tries to win you back? What if you start feeling things for him again?" I promise you. "I'm committed to us," she pleaded, her voice breaking. I felt trapped, torn between my desire to support her and my instincts screaming at me to protect myself. "I don't know, Julie. This feels like a terrible idea. Please just trust me. I need to do this for both of us," she urged. I looked into her eyes, searching for any hint of deceit, but all I saw was sincerity. It was maddening. I wanted to believe her, but the thought of her meeting him sent a wave of nausea through me. "Fine," I said finally, my voice low. "But if anything happens, if you waver at all, I'm out. I won't be part of a love triangle." "Nothing is going to happen. I love you," she said, her voice filled with desperation. As I stepped back, the reality of the situation sank in. I was letting her meet the man who had thrown our lives into chaos. It felt like a gamble, a risky bet on our future. But in that moment, I realized that if we were going to rebuild, we had to face the past head-on. I just hoped we wouldn't end up getting burned in the process. The day of Julie's meeting with Jake loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at my gut. I had tried to keep busy, diving into work and spending time with friends to distract myself, but nothing could quell the anxiety that bubbled beneath the surface. On the morning of the meeting, I awoke to find Julie already dressed, her hair cascading over her shoulders and her makeup meticulously applied. She looked beautiful, and I felt a pang of jealousy claw at my insides. That jealousy morphed into a protective instinct, and I wanted to tell her, "You don't have to do this." But I knew she felt she had to face her past for our future. "Are you ready?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, I think so," she replied, her voice shaky. "Just remember what we talked about. You're committed to us, and this is about closure," I reminded her, though I wasn't entirely convinced. "Of course. I love you, and I'm doing this for us," she said, her eyes locking onto mine with a mix of determination and fear. As she walked out the door, I felt my heart race. I couldn't shake the image of her sitting across from him, the man who had invaded our lives like a thief in the night. What if they rekindled something? What if memories of their affair flooded back, and Julie lost sight of what we were trying to rebuild? I spent the next few hours in a haze, unable to concentrate on anything. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text from her, something to reassure me that it was going okay. Eventually, the minutes stretched into hours, and I was on edge, pacing around the apartment like a caged animal. Finally, at around 4 p.m., I received a text. My heart stopped as I read the message. "Meeting went well. I'll be home soon. Can we talk?" I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension wash over me. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my racing heart. The next few minutes felt like an eternity until I heard the door unlock. Julie stepped inside, her expression unreadable. I could tell she was processing a whirlwind of emotions. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, trying to gauge her mood. She walked over and sat down on the couch, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. "I talked to Jake. It was intense." "Intense?" I repeated, my stomach clenching. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I told him everything, how what he did hurt me and you, how I was lost and I thought he could fill a void, but he didn't. He was just a distraction." I felt a flicker of hope at her words, but I held back, waiting for her to continue. "And I told him that I'm committed to making this work with you. I love you, not him," she insisted, her voice shaking. "What did he say?" I asked, trying to keep my emotions in check. "He was apologetic, but he also seemed to want to rekindle what we had," Julie said, her gaze dropping to her hands. "But I told him that chapter was closed. I need to focus on us." I wanted to believe her, but the thought of her even entertaining the idea made my blood boil. "And you really think that's enough, just saying it's over?" "I do," she insisted, meeting my gaze with fierce determination. "I've realized that he was never the answer, he was just an escape. I want to work on my issues, and I want you by my side." As she spoke, I could see that she was truly remorseful, and something inside me began to thaw. "It's going to take time, Julie. Trust doesn't come back overnight." "I know," she said, her voice steady, "but I'm willing to put in the effort. Together we can build something stronger." "I hope so," I replied, my heart aching with a mixture of hope and fear. In the days that followed, we leaned into our therapy sessions and committed to rebuilding our relationship. We focused on communication, setting boundaries, and understanding each other's needs. It was hard work, but slowly, I could feel the walls between us begin to crumble. There were still moments where doubt crept in, where triggers from the past would send me spiraling. Julie would catch me looking at her with uncertainty, and she would reassure me with soft touches and gentle words. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere," she would say, her voice a calming presence. It wasn't an easy journey, but we took it day by day, reminding ourselves that love is a choice, one that requires effort, understanding, and above all, forgiveness. As weeks turned into months, I began to see the glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who was willing to fight for our marriage. Slowly but surely, trust began to take root again. Looking back, I realized that the affair had forced us to confront the complacency in our relationship. It had shattered our illusion of perfection, but also paved the way for something real. Together, we explored our vulnerabilities, shared our dreams, and learned what it truly meant to be partners. I knew we weren't out of the woods yet, but as I held Julie's hand one evening, gazing into her eyes, I felt a flicker of hope that we could emerge stronger than before. In the end, I learned that even in the depths of betrayal, there is a chance for redemption, provided both partners are willing to fight for their love. And that, perhaps, is the most important lesson of all.